higher education is becoming known for a lot of theory and not a lot of concrete action. You know, I mean, it's where I do most of my work, but I get concerned that we sometimes don't provide enough meat. What can we do, not just what do we know? But as I started looking through the information that I have, I really started thinking quite seriously about the nature of the crisis that we have. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to give people things to do and inspire them, how much truth can I tell them about the situation? You know, my grandfather used to told my mother this story. She told me where he said, well, you know, we were in the Army and, you know, we were walking and walking and walking and everybody was exhausted, it was freezing, and so the leader of our group said, you know, I smell coffee, I smell coffee. It wasn't no coffee. But somehow the idea they could smell the coffee got troops to like run off to the next thing, even though there was really nowhere to go. There was no coffee when they got there either. But they quickened their step because of that. But before we get to that type of moment, I want to try to be very, not just honest, but unvarnished in my honesty about things bigger than Bridgeport, things bigger than your specific crisis here, because we're in a context, we're in a world. And so I want to just share with you quickly my extraordinary husband who's here. I'm not sure where he ended up, but he's somewhere in this room. Did I lose you all together there? Oh, there you are. Excellent, thank you. Always good to know where you are. One day during some very, you know, it wasn't disagreement, it was more just like, I was just saying what I thought, which is a common thing. And he said, I gotta give you a new nickname. I have a few, we'll leave those others out, right? We're not going there. But he said, I'm gonna call you Sugar-Free. I said, now that one I'm truly gonna repeat in public. I like that one. And so here, I'm hoping tonight I can be as sugar-free as possible. That doesn't mean, and you know, sugar-free doesn't mean absent love, because sugar's not love, right? But I'm hoping in this very precious space where the energy of the sweetness of Jesus is here already, that I can sort of cut underneath that and bring something sugar-free to keep us moving forward. And so that's important, because I'm about to say that it's not so much that you may not know them intuitively, but there may be an experience of the magnitude of it. And I'm going to try to get us out, but I want to give you a heads up, because I know sometimes this kind of information can be overwhelming. I teach for a living. I'm not sure if I meet Dr. Perry's standard, but I sure do try. And a lot of times I notice when I tell people some of the things I'm going to say now, they you know, it's like, I don't want to know. You know, there's that moment of like, look, I already know intuitively what you're about. Don't tell me anymore. But our way out is through. So the only way out is a deep, sugar-free, honest examination of where we are now. And honestly, how we got here. So I'm going to try to put us in larger context. First critical thing, Bridgeport is not alone. Bridgeport is not alone. Bridgeport is not an exception. Bridgeport is not an exaggerated, strange, alien space where schools are failing. Bridgeport is part of a national crisis. Frankly, it's part of a global crisis, but that's even too big for my little bit of time here. We're just going to keep it on the U.S. territory. It's part of a national crisis. A crisis that is manufactured. See, some crises happen, like tsunamis, you know, you can't control it, you just got to hopefully get away. You pay attention, the animals start running, you better start running too, because they know a tsunami's coming before we do. This isn't like that, totally unprepared, don't know. This is a manufactured crisis, manufactured by a set of policies and approaches to citizenry, particularly working people of all colors, but especially black and brown people, where the resources that we generate for the nation are taken away and used for the good of others at the biggest level. Not just educational resources, all the resources. So Bridgeport's not alone. We have an education crisis that is much bigger than Bridgeport's situation, and we have a crisis that's bigger than education. So I not only want to put Bridgeport in context, I want to put this education focus in context, because schools don't live in a vacuum. Teachers' unions don't live in a vacuum. Parenting doesn't happen in a vacuum. You see, so we can't solve, this is a network. It's almost like a web of circumstances where this moves and this has to move too. So we're all connected, and those connections mean that if we're going to solve one problem, we have to understand our bigger context. We can't fix a school in Bridgeport and not think about what education means in this country today, what's happened to Black and brown communities over the past 40 years, and what circumstances parents are in when they try to parent. Now I have to, have another caveat, because, again, I do worry. I worry about my listeners even as I'm talking. And that is that, we have to stop this fearful rejection ability to talk about the honesty of how race plays out in the United States. We've been frozen in time. I don't know how this happened. I mean, it happened so fast, I almost feel like I woke up one day and you couldn't say racism. Nobody sent me the memo in advance. I just woke up, I was still saying it, and then everybody would be quiet. I'd be like, well, what's the matter? Like, no, I can't really kick that no more. I can't say that anymore. Just people don't like it. I mean, it would literally be like that kind of hush, like you can't say it. So we have this thing now called PostRace. Y'all heard about, we're all PostRace? You heard about this? No? I'm happy to tell you all about PostRace, just so when you recognize it for what it is. PostRace is this idea that people don't see color, it doesn't function, it has no mechanism to structure society in any way. And the greatest moment of achievement, the one single African-American president out of all the presidents somehow has a magic wand and has erased 350 years of structural racism. Just like that. It was here the day before he got elected, but the day after it was gone. I truly need that wand, though, if it exists, but it does not exist. Barack Obama couldn't possibly take care of that. But what he ultimately has been used to do is to convince mainstream American society that his existence means structural inequality is not taking place. You see, so it's not him, it's how he's being used in our imagination. This isn't part of my speech at all, but I had this conversation in my own school at Brown University where I teach. And I've had the blessing of being a faculty member under Dr. Ruth Simmons, who's the first African-American and first Black female, which is 2 girls, in Ivy League school. She's extraordinary, which you would assume, but it's not always the case, but she is extraordinary. And we had some incident on campus. I was there maybe 6 months. We had some incident, which I won't even, you fill it in, it's something you know. And somebody in the administration said, well, students are very upset about this, Tricia, and they think this is racially motivated. I'm like, well, it looked that way to me. I'm like, well, why do you think it's not? What kind of data do you have? He said, well, we have a Black president. I don't see how that could possibly be true. This is before Obama. I said, oh no, we're in trouble. Because it came out so logical, so quick, so boom, boom, it's just gone. Poor Ruth Simmons sitting in one office trying to manage the institution, and she's able to somehow magically prevent any kind of structural residue. So the police, all of a sudden on Brown's campuses, they don't harass Black and brown students, just out of the jail. Oh, Ruth Simmons president, I better not harass anyone. So somehow it just trickles down. This is ridiculous. So why am I spending time on this? Because this post-race ideology hamstrings us from honestly battling for the right and resources to which we're entitled, honoring the language of the fact that those resources have been taken away. These resources have structurally been taken away, and I'm going to give you some evidence for that. And there's plenty more where that comes from, so if you like a lot of data, let me know. I'll give you as much as you want. Now, it doesn't mean that we're hostile, so let me help for those of you who are having palpitations now, that I'm about to get us all arrested or something. To say this is not to be anti-white. Sure, I got white relatives. I'm not hating. No, that's not it. I love everybody. I dislike strongly, I'm trying not to say hate, I dislike strongly the justification of racialized privilege, which equals the justification of racialized oppression. That's what I dislike. Now, everybody should get on board with my project, no matter what your background is. You see what I'm saying? If you think women are mistreated, you don't have to be a woman to think women are mistreated. If you think that Muslims are being mistreated by the war on terrorism, you don't have to be a Muslim to think that Muslims are being mistreated. You don't have to be poor to support and try to reinforce and defend poor people. So you don't have to be black to fight anti-black racism. So there you go. You make a choice, you decide. But it has nothing to do with phenotype. And this is important because this is what also stops us from talking about it honestly. Economics are at the heart of how structural racism works. The cities like Bridgeport, like New Haven, like Hartford, like any of the bigger cities, Chicago, New York, Detroit, Pittsburgh, your beloved hometown, many of these cities have what we now normalize as inner cities.